Under the dim glow of a candle in a Maryland cabin sometime in the 1820s, a frail infant cried her first breath into a world of bondage. That child, Araminta Ross, later known as Harriet Tubman, was born into a system designed to crush her spirit before she could even understand freedom. Yet, within that same frail body burned a will so powerful that even centuries later, her name reverberates as a symbol of unbreakable courage and divine purpose. She was not merely a conductor on the Underground Railroad. She was its heartbeat. A woman who defied slave catchers, Confederate armies, and the limits of her own body. Harriet Tubman did not just run to freedom. She returned time and again to lead others through the valley of death into the light of liberty. Her story is not simply that of a heroic fugitive slave, but of a tactician, a soldier, and a liberator whose life's mission redefined what resistance meant in the face of unimaginable oppression. Harriet Tubman was born around 1822 in Dorchester County, Maryland, on the plantation of Anthony Thompson, near the Brodess family, to whom she was leased for work. Her parents, Harriet Ritt Green and Benjamin Ross, were both enslaved, and their lives were bound to the same system that sought to erase any notion of identity or family. As a young girl, Tubman was hired out to various households where she endured brutal beatings and physical abuse. One of these assaults left her with a traumatic head injury when an overseer threw a heavy metal weight at another enslaved man and struck her instead. That injury would cause her lifelong seizures, visions, and dreams, experiences she interpreted as divine messages guiding her path. Her deep faith became the foundation of her rebellion. Religion was not an opiate for Harriet, it was her strategy. She believed she had been chosen by God to free her people. To her, each escape and each mission was not only an act of defiance but a sacred journey. She often quoted scripture saying, "I always told God, I'm going to hold steady on you, and you've got to see me through." In that conviction, Harriet Tubman found her strength. In 1849, after years of brutal labor and the threat of being sold deeper south, Harriet decided she could no longer live as someone else's property. One night, under a moonless sky, she made her first escape. Traveling alone, guided by the North Star and her faith, she navigated through swamps, woods, and rivers until she reached Philadelphia, a city that to her symbolized deliverance. Freedom was sweet, but her heart remained restless. Harriet later said, "I was a stranger in a strange land. My home, after all, was down in Maryland, because my father, my mother, my brothers and sisters and friends were there." This sense of unfinished mission drove her to return south time and again. Over the next decade, Harriet Tubman became the most successful conductor on the Underground Railroad. Risking her life on each journey, she guided an estimated 70 enslaved people to freedom, though she helped hundreds more indirectly through her networks and planning. She used intricate disguises, secret routes, and code songs to communicate. Spirituals like "Wade in the Water" and "Follow the Drinking Gourd" were not just hymns but coded messages directing fugitives towards safety. Her methods were meticulous and daring. She carried a pistol, both for protection and to discourage anyone in her group from turning back and endangering the rest. Tubman's reputation for success was so great that Southern slaveholders placed a bounty on her head, rumored to be as high as $40,000, an enormous sum for the time. Yet despite this, no one she led was ever captured. She once said, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." Those words would echo through history as testimony to her precision, bravery, and almost supernatural intuition. The Underground Railroad itself was not a literal railroad, but a complex, secretive network of safe houses and allies, black and white abolitionists working together to undermine the institution of slavery. Tubman's ability to operate within this system was extraordinary, especially for a woman who could neither read nor write. She relied on her memory, her instincts, and her deep understanding of nature. She often traveled during winter when the nights were long and slave patrols were fewer, moving through marshlands where hounds could not easily track scent. But Harriet's work extended far beyond rescue missions. As tensions between North and South escalated toward the Civil War, her role evolved from freedom fighter to military strategist. When war broke out in 1861, Tubman saw it as a divine opportunity to strike at the heart of slavery. She volunteered for the Union Army, first serving as a nurse in camps for formerly enslaved people, tending to the sick and wounded with herbal remedies she had learned in her youth. Yet she was not content to remain behind the lines. She soon began working as a scout and spy, using her knowledge of Southern terrain and her ability to move unnoticed among enslaved populations. Her most famous military operation came in 1863, when she guided Union Colonel James Montgomery and his troops in the Combahee River raid in South Carolina. This mission was historic for many reasons. It marked the first time in American history that a woman led an armed military operation. Using intelligence she gathered from enslaved people in the region, Tubman helped plan a nighttime raid on Confederate rice plantations. The Union gunboats steamed up the river, and as the soldiers advanced, enslaved men, women, and children fled toward freedom. More than 700 people were liberated that night. The success of the Combahee River raid dealt a psychological blow to the Confederacy and confirmed Tubman's reputation as a master of guerrilla strategy. She had become, in essence, a general, though history took decades to recognize her as such. Despite her enormous contributions, Harriet Tubman received little financial compensation or recognition during her lifetime. After the war, she returned to Auburn, New York, where she had purchased land with the help of abolitionist Senator William H. Seward. There she devoted herself to caring for the poor, the sick, and the elderly, transforming her home into a haven for those in need. Her activism did not end with the Civil War. She became an outspoken advocate for women's suffrage, working alongside figures like Susan B. Anthony and Sojourner Truth. Tubman believed that freedom was incomplete without equality, and she saw the struggle for women's rights as a continuation of her fight against oppression. Her final years were marked by financial hardship and declining health, yet her spirit never wavered. She continued to live according to the same principles that had guided her on the Underground Railroad. When asked about her incredible courage, she famously replied, "I had reasoned this out in my mind. There was one of two things I had a right to, liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other." That statement captured the essence of her life. She feared no man, no law, and no system that sought to strip her of her humanity. When Harriet Tubman passed away in 1913 at the age of 91, she was surrounded by family and friends in the home she had founded for aged and impoverished African Americans. Her funeral was a military one, a fitting tribute to a woman who had served as a warrior for her people and her country. She was buried with full military honors in Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn. Over the decades that followed, her legend grew, transcending race, gender, and nationality. She became not just an American hero, but a global symbol of resistance and faith. Modern scholarship has deepened our understanding of Harriet Tubman not as a mythic figure, but as a complex human being, one whose resilience emerged from trauma, faith, and love. Historians like Kate Clifford Larson, Jean Humez, and Milton C. Cernit have explored how her personal experiences with violence and injustice shaped her strategies and leadership. Tubman's work in intelligence and guerrilla warfare, once overlooked, is now studied by military historians as an example of early American asymmetrical warfare. Her influence continues to echo through modern movements for justice. From the civil rights struggles of the 20th century to the Black Lives Matter protests of today, Tubman's spirit remains a guiding force. The plan to feature her image on the U.S. $20 bill was more than a symbolic gesture. It was an acknowledgement of her place in the American story. She was not a passive victim of history, but an architect of liberation. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Harriet Tubman's legacy lies in her enduring humanity. She was not motivated by fame or reward, but by an unyielding compassion for her people. In an era when enslaved individuals were considered property, she insisted on their dignity and personhood. Her actions embodied the radical notion that freedom was not a privilege granted by law, but a birthright given by God. To understand Harriet Tubman is to understand the contradictions of America itself, its capacity for cruelty, and its potential for redemption. She lived in the shadows of one of the nation's darkest institutions, yet managed to bring light where there was none. Her journeys through the night symbolized more than physical escape. They represented the passage from despair to hope, from bondage to belonging. Even now, over a century after her death, her story continues to inspire new generations to confront injustice wherever it hides. She remains the very definition of courage, an ordinary woman who performed extraordinary deeds because she refused to accept the world as it was. When we speak her name, we do not merely remember the past. We invoke a timeless truth, that freedom, once awakened in the human soul, cannot be chained again. Harriet Tubman was not just a conductor, not just a spy, and not just a nurse. She was the living embodiment of rebellion sanctified by faith, a general without an army, who turned her belief into a weapon, her compassion into a strategy, and her life into a testament that even the smallest spark of defiance can light the path to liberation. Her story stands as one of the most powerful testaments to human endurance in all of history. She was, and forever will be, the Moses of her people.